Welcome. As you know, my name is Scott Major, and I'm going to be talking to you today about various parts of how to process an insurance claim, whether that is processing it from the standpoint of FEMA, whether it is talking about the flood policy or the homeowners policy. And when I refer to homeowners policy, those are the residential structure policies. It could include commercial policies and other typical full-service insurance policies. And in order to understand the best way to process these claims, it's really important to understand some of the background, the information that supports each of these policies. What kinds of terms are there? What is the processes that we should undergo? And how do these policies work? Okay. Whenever you have a nationally declared disaster, whenever the president says there is a disaster, what happens is you end up with a declaration by the president which activates FEMA, Florida, the Federal Emergency Management Association. And what they do is they come in and assist with providing immediate relief. Sometimes that relief is in the form of food and orchestration of just shelter and basic accommodations. As it progresses, it turns into money, temporary money, permanent money, grants, and loans through the SBA. Whenever there is a federally declared disaster, the SBA partners with automatically FEMA to provide loan assistance. That becomes important later when we discuss, how to get grant money. So we start with that proposition that FEMA is going to come in an emergency basis immediately upon a declared disaster. Now, you can secure insurance, that is homeowners, residential, condominium, co-op, renters, boiler and machinery type of insurance proceeds without having to have a disaster. But when you have a disaster, you have the added component of FEMA coming in to provide additional resources. Now, because you have FEMA involved, you may have money that comes from FEMA, which may also fall underneath a valid insurance policy. If I lose my contents in my house, if I have structural damage such that I can't get into my house, or structural damage that has to be repaired in order to make my house safe, FEMA has some money that may be available for you to secure. However, if you have a homeowner's insurance policy, and that homeowner's insurance policy would cover the same, FEMA does not want to duplicate those benefits. So you will have situations where insurance may cover something that you may also be entitled to FEMA relief. So what the government did was attempt to eliminate this problem by telling you that in all of these claims, your first and primary type of relief is going to be your insurance policies. So whenever you have a situation where you are facing reviewing or looking at types of insurance relief or disaster relief, the first thing you're going to look at is whether you have insurance coverage. Now, what's fascinating or troubling, depending on how you look at this, is that while you have to first go to your insurance policies, the insurance may not pay quick enough because their processes tend to work a little slower, whereas FEMA's purpose is an emergency. So we have to balance this dichotomy of telling you that you have insurance proceeds that you have to go to first with the emergency needs that are set out by FEMA. So what FEMA does is says, go and apply for FEMA relief. Also go to your insurance company. If there's emergency remedies we can provide you, we'll provide you with them. But fundamentally, you need to still apply for the FEMA relief because we might be able to give you something immediately. Now that may be in the form of a loan, or that may be in the form of grant money, but the concept is that FEMA is designed to be an emergency relief system, whereas your insurance is supposed to be a longer-term, more permanent solution. It's not to say that FEMA can't pay you money to fix your entire house, depending on what the damages are, but it's the concept that they're trying to balance those needs but they're also trying to understand that you need to make sure that you aggressively go after your insurance also. So you may have situations, in fact, you will have situations, where FEMA will come out and they will say, we're denying your claim because you have not exhausted your insurance remedies. So that is a situation where FEMA is not really saying you can't get insurance, but they're saying you must exhaust your insurance remedies. It's like in an administrative environment in law, you have to exhaust your administrative remedies before you can go into a court of law. So for purposes of understanding how this operates, you're going to have this conjunctive type of situation where you're balancing these two efforts. So if I am in some ways restricted by FEMA, if FEMA is saying I'm not going to give you all your money or any of your money, then I need to make sure that I concomitantly process these insurance claims as fast as I can. Now, insurance companies have duties to get out to a property in a reasonable or immediate time after they've been notified. And we're going to talk about notification. But governors can step in and make emergency orders to expedite that time. For example, in New York, Governor Cuomo established a rule that says that insurance companies, instead of going out within 15 days, have to go out within 6 days of when you call them, forcing relief to come sooner. They also established a report card for insurance companies where you can report how they performed. So in the future, you can determine the type of claims processing these insurance companies have, and it may help to give you a perspective of what kind of insurance you want to buy. So on the short term, it may provide a mechanism to either complain or reward the insurance companies. Over the long term, the insurance companies are going to be graded, if you will, just like schools are graded. And then you're going to see judgments being made based on how well they process claims. You're going to want to buy an insurance policy from an insurance company that's prompt, that pays fully. So what will happen is, in the longer term, this is going to set a good precedent for the choice of insurance. So I don't think that the insurance companies are going to take this lightly. Having said that, they oftentimes do not pay claims right out of the box. You have to demonstrate and document your claims, or you're going to have it denied. So I have the FEMA organization, which is like a miniature insurance company of sorts, funded by the government. And then I have these insurance companies that are providing flood or residential or commercial type insurance. And I'm trying to get money from either or both, recognizing that I have to exhaust and try to get insurance first while I'm balancing the emergency need to get money. Now, FEMA has different types of programs that will allow emergency funds to come even before your insurance company can get out there. Let me give you an example. The FEMA STEP program, Sheltering Temporary Essential Power, involves the ability to, on an emergency basis, get someone out to your home, to fix your electric, to turn on your heating, so that you can at least get back in your home immediately, even though your house is not completely fixed. And that is a program which people can get money for immediately. And it's a grant program which, say, for example, might give you $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 or a certain set of money to allow you to do that. So you're going to have this sort of balancing going on. As a result of this, you're also going to face inconsistent types of results. What do I mean by that? You're going to have some people who are getting some money from FEMA even though they haven't finished their insurance stuff. And you're going to have other people who are being told you can't get money because you didn't exhaust your insurance. They haven't really effectively resolved the problem of the discretionary balance between the differing adjusters who are paying and not paying claims, as we've seen in many storms, including the most recent storm. But for your purposes in processing the claim, you want to know that FEMA relief's out there, but that we're immediately going to want to go to those insurance companies because they're generally going to have a lot more money and they generally have a primary duty to pay. When we talk about FEMA versus the insurance companies, we want to understand that FEMA is a government-based organization, and so there are a lot of people that may come in that may not be experts in their fields versus insurance companies that do this for a living. So the precision and the intelligence quotient in terms of their specific knowledge of an area might be different. And you have to understand that sophistication because the insurance companies are more likely to have a lot more requirements and technicalities than necessarily the government has. It doesn't mean that they're less intelligent. It means it's a different type of criteria. FEMA is coming in on an emergency basis. So as we begin this process, we want to understand that balance between the two and how to go about getting relief. Now, in order to understand what kind of relief that you can get, we got to understand what FEMA does and what insurance policies are and what they cover. So what I thought would be helpful is to first discuss some core understanding of insurance terms, how an insurance policy works, and then apply it to various forms of relief that you can get. Now, if you start with, say, an insurance policy, you have materials that will help you to understand that there are 4 basic provisions. If you look on the pages of your insurance policy, you will see that there are declarations, there are conditions, there are insurance or insuring agreements, and there are exclusions. Now, many people will tell you that insurance policies are policies of exclusion. That is, that what you have is your first page, your declarations page, telling you what your coverage is, and then 50 pages or 100 pages telling you what's not covered. And as comedic as it may sound, in some ways it rings true. It doesn't mean that they're trying to not pay you. It means that there are a number of exclusions that required, the insurance company to put it in writing so that you can determine whether something is covered or something isn't covered, and the extent to which it's covered. So, if you understand the basic conditions of an insurance policy, you're going to better be able to apply it when the client asks you questions about, hey, this says it in my insurance policy that I can't get this, or I can get this. Is that true? Or what can I get? Can I get my shoes that got ruined? Can I get my stereo? Can I get my washer and dryer? If so, how do I get that? Do I get that through flood insurance? Do I get that through homeowners? Do I get that through the commercial policy? Do I get that through FEMA? How do I get that? And so these kinds of rules, this kind of contract is going to set that out for you. So what are declarations? Let's go through each one. What are declarations? Declarations is the page of the insurance policy that tells you what they're declaring as coverage. Sometimes people call it the deck sheet. If you want to sound cool, you say, do you have your deck sheet? Okay? So if you have your deck sheet, that's the page that's going to say, here's your coverage. Say in a homeowner's insurance policy, here is your coverage A for your structure. Here is your coverage C for your contents. And it's going to state exactly what the coverage is, what the deductible is, and some other information. But principally, that's going to be your guidepost to whether that person has coverage. Geez, they had a terrible storm and their house got destroyed, but they only have $8,000 of coverage for their contents. They're not getting $50,000 worth of payments for clothing and washers and dryers and other types of things that are contained within inside because it's not going to be covered. So you have to start with, well, what do we have with each situation? Okay? And the declarations will help you to understand that. The next section that you have is called conditions. Conditions are, what do I have to do to get money? What do I need to do, insurance company, in order to fulfill my responsibility so that you can pay me under the insurance policy? For example, in order to get recovery under most insurance policies, you have to file, you have to send in, you have to deliver what's called a proof of loss, or some people call it a sworn statement in proof of loss. What that is essentially a form that says, I swear that this is true, that I'm claiming these damages. There's a form that is generically available out there in the marketplace, and then insurance companies sometimes have different kinds of additional provisions I might have. But it is basically a single form that says, what is the amount of your damages? What are your deductibles? How much are you claiming? I swear to God this is true. And so by doing that, we are setting up a condition. We are saying, in order to get paid money, I got to follow these conditions. It's very, very important to know the conditions in a policy, because sometimes you can't pursue litigation. You can't get money unless you follow them. So 2 common conditions would be a sworn statement and proof of loss and sitting for what's called an examination under oath. It's like a deposition before any litigation occurs. What an examination under oath is, the insurance company has the right to take a sworn statement and ask you questions about your loss to verify it's accurate. If you do not make yourself available for a examination under oath, if you refuse to participate, if you don't do a proof of loss, the insurance company doesn't have to pay you, because that is a condition to payment. And some people say it's a condition precedent or a condition precedent to the payment, which means in order to get it, I have to do that. Contrast that with something called a condition subsequent. And that is something that has to be done after you initiate something. And that type of situation comes up mostly when we're debating about litigation and whether you complied. The conditions subsequent are sometimes also called cooperation clauses. I have a duty along the way to cooperate. When they ask me for my estimate, I need to provide it. When they ask me to make my house available, I need to make it available. There are certain duties along the way that can harm your ability to get either any money or full money. That's the condition section. The next section is the insuring agreements. And what the insurance agreements do is exactly what it sounds like. It's the agreement explaining your coverage. We will pay for any damage that results from such and such. We will pay for X, Y, and Z. We will not pay for those damages which are caused by pollutants. So pollutants are defined as, so it's the core, the main part of your insurance policy. And if I understand what they will pay and won't pay, that's going to help me also in my analysis. The final component of the insurance agreement is exclusions, which is what you see most common. We will not pay for any damage to your home caused by the failure to maintain that home. We will not pay for any damage caused by deterioration or natural wear and tear. So if you have a claim that is damage as a result of the storm, and you say, I have a roof damage claim, my roof got damaged and water leaked in, then if you didn't take care of the roof during that time period, you can't use the storm to solve your problem. You have to have taken care of it. That's why if you have condominium association situations, commercial association situations, they will say, give me the board meeting minutes, give me the documents that show you maintain the building. Because I want to see that you just didn't let it deteriorate, dilapidate, regress into a condition that is not reasonable for us to be required to pay. We do have to pay if there's a covered peril, P-E-R-I-L, that is an event which causes the harm. But we don't have to pay if you caused it, if you created it. Another example is, let's say that in a building you had a hole in the wall, whether it was caused by birds or caused by whatever, and as a result, water got in there and damaged property, and it was during a storm. Well, you are probably not going to get relief because the storm didn't cause the damage, the hole did. So understanding the exclusions and what they exclude and what they don't is very important. For example, some people, both on the insurance side and on the professional side, who are seeking to secure money, will say, there's a wind-driven rain exception. And that means if you have rain that's driven by wind, you can't get recovery. Well, that sounds silly because all rainstorms have rain and wind. Well, you have to look at what that means. A wind-driven rain exclusion is exactly what we talked about with the hole. It's if rain is driven in, and it's driven in by something you caused. That's going to be a wind-driven rain exclusion. Yes, the rain got in by wind, but no, it wasn't caused by the storm. If you create an event that allows something to happen, you may find yourself subject to exclusions. So you need to understand, and you will find a remarkable amount of exclusions. And we'll have a different section on exclusions, but it helps you to understand. So now I have the 4 components of that insurance policy. And when you look at an insurance policy, you will see those exact 4 components. And you start fundamentally with that declarations page. So when I'm on the phone with somebody, when I'm in meeting with them, when I'm speaking with them, I want to make sure I know what kind of coverage do we have so I know whether I can help them. And if so, how? So if they don't have coverage for contents, which a lot of people don't, when they buy, let's say, flood policies, they might not buy content. They don't think in New York, in New Jersey, they're going to have a hurricane. They don't buy contents coverage, even though they clearly had a flood and it destroyed all their clothing. And the flood waters caused that damage. You really are not going to be able to get them money because they didn't pay for that coverage. You get what you pay for. You don't get what you don't. So it's important to understand, using that declarations sheet and then any exclusions, exactly what is going on. If you understand that, you're going to be in a great position fundamentally when you talk to anyone to know what to do. So now we have gone through and we understand what an insurance policy is. Let's understand from a homeowners and flood and other policies what kinds of coverage we will have. Let me start with a homeowner's policy. A homeowner's policy will have 4 principal types of coverages. They actually list them as A, B, C, and D. Coverage A is your structure. That is the building envelope, they call it. The roof, the walls, the structure around the house, the electrical, the plumbing, the things which make up the hardcore components of a structure. Then you have coverage B, which is other structures. Say you have a fence. You have a garage, which is detached. You have a shed. You have other structures which are set forth in your policy that are not necessarily affixed to that building. You have coverage C, contents. I like coverage C because I can remember C for contents. And as you see from your information, your coverage C, your contents or your personal property coverage, goes to those things like clothing, your computers, the things which are inside your house which get damaged as a result. And then you have coverage D, which is the loss of use, your inability to use the house. I had to move out while the general contractor was fixing the house, and so as a result, I lost that ability. I had to pay money to a hotel, to a rental environment while my house was being fixed. So if we know those different coverages, we're going to know when we hear on the phone or when we see somebody says, I had to move out of my house, I need to get money for that. When I hear that, I immediately say, okay, I need to go to coverage D. What kind of coverage do we have? You wouldn't believe it. My electrical was destroyed. As soon as I hear electrical, coverage A. My plumbing, you wouldn't believe it. The plumbing, the wind blew and it made a crack in the wall, and then the plumbing got screwed up and it broke one of the pipes. Coverage A. And it's important because what they say, what information you gather, what you collect through an intake form is going to determine how much coverage you have. And for the purposes of maximizing recovery, I want to use every bit of every coverage. I don't want to use contents coverage in the wrong way when there's less contents coverage than structures coverage. So just so you understand how much coverage, if you had your structures, your coverage A coverage, typically coverage B, the other structures, is 10%. So if I buy $200,000 of coverage for my home, typically your other structures coverage is going to be $20,000. So if they built a $900,000 detached garage that was made out of gold, they're getting whatever that coverage B is. So you might look and go, wow, we've got a great claim. That coverage was, for a $900,000 detached garage that had a stereo in it and gold walls and you look at the coverage and it says $27,000. You see how we keep running back to I'm using that declarations page. And then from that I'm deciding, well, let me fit in whatever the item is into that coverage. And as you do that, you'll start to understand, hey, I've got one from column A, column B, column C, column D. And this is a critical thing. And when you're creating either internal software forms or you're creating other types of things, you can have these triggers say, once I get over a certain amount of money, it's telling me I can't get any more. So those coverages are important to understanding what you'll be able to get in money. Now, you can contrast those types of coverages with flood insurance. Now, flood insurance, just for coverage sake, has two principal kinds of coverage: building property and personal property. And you see how that's different. And the building property is much like your building envelope, much like your structures. It is covering those principal kinds of things. And most flood insurance, for example, if you have it through the National Flood Insurance Program, will be less money of coverage than for a homeowner's. So on the one hand, by review, you've got a homeowner's policy that has coverage A, coverage B, coverage C, and coverage D. Some great delineations. Over here on the flood side, you have really just building and have contents. And so, generally speaking, it sounds like it's less. And you're going to find in practicality it is. That's why when you get into homeowners coverage, you generally see higher numbers. And generally your homeowners is going to be more, or your commercial is going to be more, or your condominium is going to be more. Now, renters insurance is a little different because I'm really covering what the space I'm renting is. I'm not really covering other types of things outside. I am just occupying the space, so I want to cover what I'm occupying. That's why renters insurance policies are very low, because they're generally content rich. I want to make sure that if something happens and then it gets inside those four walls, that I'm protected with my clothes, my jewelry, my computers. That's why renters insurance is not going to cover as much, and it's going to be more principally inside. So because you hear these different things, it naturally segues into, well, who do I have here? Who is the person now I'm speaking to? Are they an owner? Are they a renter? Are they a condominium unit owner? Are they the condominium association? Are they the commercial business owner? Because that's going to help me to understand what type of policy and how much coverage I have. So, if we move from the principal guidelines of the homeowners insurance we talked about to understanding the way flood insurance works, we'll better understand, okay, what kinds of things fall within flood versus those things that fall within homeowners versus those things that fall within FEMA. Okay? So if I move to my flood coverage, which is your next item, you will see that you have a simple explanation of the type of typical flood coverage, and in this case, the National Flood Insurance Program. There are two kinds of flood insurance. There is the flood insurance that's funded by the government, and there is the flood insurance you can buy on your own. If you're in a flood zone, sometimes you can't buy any other insurance. Sometimes you can, depending on the type of zone, depending on how aggressive those insurance carriers are in that space. So when I talk about flood insurance, I immediately want to say to myself, there might be more than one policy. Or, depending on the type of policy, I might have more coverage, because the National Flood Insurance Policy has strict limitations. And I've itemized them for you. Very clear, very easy to understand. Whereas when I buy my private insurance, if I have a multi-million-dollar home, I'm not sure I want only $250,000 of insurance, because if the flood comes in and takes away my home, I don't want to be left with, here's your check for $250,000 on your $6 million home. Now, as we started talking about the different terms, and we went over those sections, we are naturally now in a place where we can talk about, well, I need to understand what a flood policy is, and then I need to understand how to determine which policy is going to be the applicable policy. So let's go back to flood and talk about what is in flood. Now, I mentioned to you there are two kinds of coverages. If you see the National Flood Insurance Program, it's set forth in your documentation. It has building property insurance up to $250,000 and contents up to $100,000. Now, what's a flood? Well, remarkably, you actually have a definition put out by the government to define what a flood is. And you'll be able to actually use that definition, so when you hear what someone says, you'll know whether it's a flood. Some things which are in a flood, you wouldn't consider them a flood, but they're really within that terminology. And what is that definition? As you see here, it's a general and temporary condition of partial or complete inundation of 2 or more acres of normally dry land or 2 or more properties. So a flood can be an isolated event, but still be a flood. It doesn't have to be a world event. Let's continue. From what? Overflow or inland tidal waters. So a flood can occur just by the mere fact that the sea level rises because of rain and wind, and it causes water to go over, even though you didn't have 300 inches of rain. Very important. Unusual or rapid accumulation of runoff of surface waters from any source. It's saying that even if you don't have the overflow, if you have some drainage issues, if you have some problem endemic to that environment which creates heavy flow of water, you can recover even though there wasn't 300 inches of rain. Mud flow. I don't think conventionally as flood always of mud flow. I think of it more as just water, but it's saying if large amounts of mud flow, then that's going to be defined as flood. What's fascinating about that, and I don't think FEMA's addressed it, is in some of the cases in New York, you have sewage and other types of debris which is moving along either because of broken pipes, overflows, natural problems. Whether that's going to be covered is going to be an interesting discussion. But mud flow is actually defined because they don't want you to make mud flow too wide. And it says a river of liquid and flowing mud on surfaces that is carried by water. So you're dealing with a definition of flood that's clear. It does have one other aspect of it that you might see, and that is the collapse of land, things which waters can cause. You will see some pictures of property where you see houses and there's these holes. It almost looks like a sinkhole. But the holes of water that erode away that type of problem. And it says flood includes a collapse or subsidence of land, particularly that you're going to see along the shoreline. So you understand now fundamentally what a flood is. Flood policies are different from homeowners policies because homeowners policies, I can buy a replacement cost value of a policy. I can say whatever it costs me to replace that house, $500,000, you have to pay. Under the National Flood Program, they won't allow you to get replacement cost coverage, generally. There are exceptions, but generally speaking. I have to get what is the value of that structure, that item. That is the actual cash value. Hence these cocktail terms, RCV, replacement cost value, ACV, actual cost value. Most flood policies are actual cash value. So if you have an item that's lost, you're not going to get exactly what you paid for it. You're going to get the appreciated value of that. And I will tell you, just to use an example, that you have property, it may not be worth as much. Your computer that you bought 4 years ago, while it has all of your data and it's worth $1 million to you, it's worth $165 in actual cash value. And these small computers, you see how they continually move. The iPad 1, the iPad 2, the iPad 3. Is the iPad 1 worth $599 now? $799 now? When it doesn't have the features of the 2 and the 3? I have to value that. That's actual cash value. And you can actually buy homeowners policies that are actual cash value too. But understand, so when the person says, my entire house was destroyed and I got flood insurance and I'm entitled to get all my money from my flood insurance to replace my entire $700,000 home. You under the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP? Don't think so. Look at the policy. Wow, $250,000. When we started, we talked about first let's define the terms. Then let's understand what policies we have and how they work. And then let's understand how do we fit our fact pattern into the varying policies. Okay? So you want to know what policy to use, but you want to understand what that policy is. And under this particular criteria, you're starting to see, as was aptly noted, you're starting to see that there's not as much coverage here as there might be for a structure in a homeowner's insurance policy when we went over those sections. So when we get to how we determine the peril, you'll now be able to understand where I want to push that information. Obviously, I want to have the policies that have the most coverage because I want to get the most money for that insured. Okay? So when we get into the description of the peril and how we push it, you will now be able to apply these terms that you know. In the flood policy, you have seen this sort of limited definition of what constitutes a flood, which triggers this national flood policy. Now, there are also additional criteria you need to know about the flood policy, which are covered in your materials. When you see the term a valued policy means the same thing as a replacement cost value. That means you're supposed to get what you paid for it versus the actual value. So when you see that term, you can just go back to the replacement cost value and actual cash value that we talked about earlier. Some people call the replacement cost value a guaranteed replacement cost policy. Okay? That's the same thing as a replacement cost value. So those terminologies are used interchangeably. If you flip over, you will see a description on the next page of what kinds of things are going to be covered. Okay, a flood comes in. What's covered? Is the basement covered? Is the main floor covered? Is the second floor covered? What's covered? The National Flood Insurance Policy, slightly different than other flood insurance policies, prescribes certain limitations. And they say, hey, if you have waters that go underneath a house, below a certain house, we're going to have different types of criteria, much less coverage for water that goes underneath your house than water that goes in it. Because the purpose of a flood policy is to cover flood that comes in your home. So you'll see descriptions of pictures of the types of things, basements and, crawl spaces and other types of things where coverage may be more limited than inside those four walls. And remember, principally, the flood coverage is covering what's inside. You recall that when we spoke about homeowners, we had other structures, we had fences, we have pools, we have other things. The flood policy is principally covering inside. That's why you see the building, the structure, and you see contents. And you only see two categories. So you're getting an understanding from the materials of exactly what's covered and what's not. And to make it easier, we've created a list of exactly what is typically covered under the building coverage and what is covered under the individual property coverage. So if you look on your chart, you'll see foundations and walls and air conditioners. Sounds like, the building type of thing. And then you'll see, washers and dryers and freezers and portable conditioners that are under the personal property. And then you'll see a section that says not insured. They're not insuring in the National Flood Policy bookcases and things which might be covered under a homeowner's policy. And those exclusions are stated inside the policy. What you're getting now is a summary of the kinds of things. Once you get comfortable with those categories and this checklist, you'll hear and you'll immediately know that is not, it's a bookcase, I got a National Flood Policy, and they're not getting money for that. And these checklists, these forms, these informational guides are designed to allow you to literally hear what they say and plug in nope, nope, yep, nope, and yep. And so what these particular provisions in the flood policy, like the homeowners we have, and like the extra flood policies and the commercial policies, it's going to tell you what's covered and what's not. That gives you the fundamentals of that flood policy so you understand what that is. Now, FEMA has specific forms that help you to file claims and process claims in a general sense, as well as under the flood program. So you have FEMA on the one hand helping you with emergency assistance and things, and the federal government helping you on the other hand with flood-based insurance. And there are forms online to fill out and learn how to use that information. Now, let me tell you something about National Flood Insurance. It is generally manned, if you will, by insurance companies. The federal government doesn't have a giant insurance company. So you will have individual insurance companies that get a certain portion, like $25 for each claim, to go out and process the claim for the federal government. So when Hartford Insurance calls up and says, we want to see Dr. Smith's home under his policy, his National Flood Insurance Policy, it's not really the Hartford that's paying the claim. So when I'm in this national flood, that Hartford person really is just a adjuster, a processing arm. They have no dog in that fight, almost. And so from a strategic standpoint, they might be more likely to be your friend because they're not affected by the outcome in a general sense. Specifically, but generally they're not. So when I'm in that flood policy world, that is different from a separate flood policy that an insurance company writes. So when I know that I'm in the flood insurance policy, I'm going to know there are different triggering mechanisms. So when Hartford calls up or some insurance company calls up, it's really not the insurance company. The government is paying the money. So as we get later on into the strategies of how you actually process, the psychology of processing the claim, we're going to come back to that. But I mentioned that because you're going to hear National Flood Insurance Policy, but you're going to hear different types of insurers calling you on the phone. You might have 10 different insurance companies that set up appointments for 10 different clients who are all under the National Flood Policy. But they're in a different region, and so a different insurance company is handling that. But right now, we're in the core section of the definitions and understanding what those are. There's actual fact sheets like what you saw and handed out just to give you an informational guide that are put out by the actual National Flood Insurance Program. And you will have those forms available, and they'll also be posted online so you can tell the prospect or the client, hey, if you want to learn more, you can click here. I can send you a form, or you can go online, and it will tell you exactly how to file a claim. Now, we've been through the FEMA component. We've been through the homeowners insurance types of coverage, and we've been through the flood insurance types. Now let's talk about how do I go about effectuating the processing of my claim, determining what is going to be covered, what policy I should be under, what kind of relief I should get. Now, ultimately, as we discussed, you are going to have more coverage in a homeowner's policy, in a commercial policy, than you will in a flood policy. So it makes sense that when I could be underneath my homeowner's insurance policy, I may be likely to get more dollars. In order to determine how you get into those policies, you got to look at what the peril that I mentioned, P-E-R-I-L, is. What caused the damage? If I use a simple example, if a flood comes into the home and causes the damage to your clothing, that is a flood claim. If the wind blows in your door, that is a homeowner's claim or a commercial claim. And again, we're talking generalities. We're going to get into more specifics, but you want to look at what caused the problem. In most hurricanes, depending on where the property is, it can help you define what type of peril. If I'm on the coast, I may have more flood implications as well as storm damage, where if I'm far inland or if I'm in the middle of a country, I might have a higher likelihood of having homeowners. Now, again, we're talking about the general understanding of what is the cause. As we get further into the discussion, we'll talk about how we can strategically move certain things into exactly what kind of coverage. But we're in the fundamentals of understanding exactly what causes events. Okay? So we now have, okay, I understand the 3 food groups. What do I do now? How do I get money? What is the first thing I say to a client? How do I even start once I hear that there is an event? Now, there are 2 typical forms of communication. There is the communication that is going to be pushed to me. Say I fill out a form online, I receive data, and now I'm going to call on that data. I call that a push technology. And a pull communication. Somebody leaves their name and number. I don't know anything about the claim. I have to call up and pull information from them. If I have information in my possession, it's going to give me a better landscape of how to approach that particular client. So, for example, if somebody's filled out a form and they've listed they have a flood insurance policy and they've listed that they have homeowners, then it's going to be easier for me to home in and not have to ask them about that, whether they have the documents, but to actually say, I see you have a homeowners policy that has XYZ coverage. Do you have damage to your floors? Do you have damage? And you can see how I can strategically move people by doing that. And again, this is the embryonic stages, but I'm giving you an example of when we get to the end line, you'll be able to do that. So I want to be able to gather as much data as I can. When I'm talking about these types of claims, more is more. When I have more data, I will be able to give a better assessment and strategically probably get more money. Now, this is going to be probably foreign to you, because even though you're typically calling up or speaking with a client or getting an inquiry and you're going to ask basic information, the level of information we're going to talk about is going to be in much more detail. And I'm going to give you an example, and then we're going to come back to it. I've received your online form. It's a pleasure to meet you. Let me talk to you about what kind of communications you have. Who'd you speak to first? What did they physically say to you? What did you say to them? What did they say to you? What did you say to them? Then what? Then what? Then what else did you say? Then what else? Did they really say that? What was the exact words they used? Tell me those words. Did they follow up with a document? What kind of document? When did they write it? Did you write it? Did they write it? What did you write back to that? What did you do as a result of getting that writing? Who else was in the room? Did anybody else hear you? What did they say? What did they do? What did they say? Then what happened? Then what happened? So let me go over with you. So you did all these things, all these things. Is there anything else? Oh, yeah, there is? Well, how about that? Tell me about that communication. What did they say? Do you remember the exact words? What were the exact words? That's just the one communication. You might have dozens of communications. So you can understand that we're going to have to take our time, because what people say in these areas of practice, insurance law, can be fatal or determinative. He came over to my house and he said I have well over $150,000 worth of damage, but he told me to give me $10,000 now. Definition? You have over $150,000 of coverage. He should be paying you $150,000. There's no reason not to pay you $150,000. But if someone says to you, yeah, they came over and gave me $10,000, and they just leave that out because they didn't think that was important, then, and you don't know that. Well, what happened? Well, he came over and he did a thorough inspection, and he said he'll give me $10,000. And he said he's come back, but he said he'll give me $10,000. If I don't exhaust out, what did he exactly say? I might not know that he or she made a promise that may be fatal to them, that may allow me to go to them, their supervisor, and their supervisor. So what I call the exhaustion technique, when you ask for information, when you meet with a client in person, when you interact by email, is going to be critical to be thorough. You want to make sure that you capture all the information, because if we can fit it into those food groups of homeowners or flood or FEMA, it's going to be easier for us to also get the most money for the client. So in this process of I'm now starting to process a claim, I want to understand exactly what I'm really up against. And it is amazing how people forget. It is equally amazing how people will remember. When you talk to them and you tell them that they know more, they understand more, they remember more, they start to change the way they think, and they open their minds up to other possibilities. And so what I will do often is I will repeat what they say. And again, I'm using these just as examples. We're going to get into the strategy later to help them to understand. So what you said to me is that you called up and said hello, and then you told them about your claim, and you explained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they said they're not paying you for that. What else did they say? Not did they say anything else. What else did they say? Nobody says, well, we clicked the phones. But they're not thinking that way. So part of this inquiry is this, what I call shrimp netting. I throw a giant shrimp net out. I grab all the fish and then I pick out the lobster. I'm shrimp netting. I want to make sure I have the full sum of all information. When I teach sophisticated trial and deposition techniques to lawyers, what I try to do is explain to them that you need to make sure you have every bit of information from that person. I don't care what the information is. I want to know what it is. I want to make sure I've extracted each and every sentence, word, document, knowledge base that they have. Okay, so how do I go about doing that in this context? While you will not necessarily be handling a lot of FEMA claims per se, I think it's important to understand the basics about what FEMA covers, because at the early junctures of any disaster, you're going to have to know what those types of coverages are, because they're going to ask you questions. Principally, you're going to be helping in the areas of how to secure insurance coverage, but for viewers, for clients, we want to understand what is FEMA, what does it cover, how does it cover. And so in your materials, you'll also have information which will tell you exactly how FEMA works and what it does. Let me take you through a few of the core things in FEMA, and then I can create a set of materials for you that will complement those materials. FEMA is broken into two types of coverages: housing needs, other housing needs. I want to make sure that I get individual assistance, what they call IA, in the form of housing needs or other housing needs. How do I do that? Well, there are qualifications that an individual has to have in order to get it. First, we have to have a declared disaster. So I have to make sure the person who's on the phone with me is in one of those areas that has been declared a disaster by the president. And FEMA.gov and other similar websites actually have all of the counties. So if we're on Long Island and we're in Nassau County, that has been one of the counties that's declared a disaster. Once they declare a disaster by the president, FEMA relief is available. If they don't declare it a disaster, FEMA relief is not available. You actually have some states where they only allowed public assistance, PA, instead of individual assistance, IA. So in New York, New Jersey, individual assistance is available in the form of housing needs and other housing needs, if I'm inside that county. What are housing needs and other housing needs? Housing needs are temporary housing, repairs, replacement of items. They sound like the title. They relate to housing. And they are available to you to help you get back in your home, to help make your home livable, to help you with being able to recover money that will repair your home on an emergency basis. Your FEMA STEP program is a separate fund, but a small version of, let's at least get your power back on. The housing needs is a little bit more. I need to repair my home because I have a broken window. The STEP program might not fix a broken window because you can tape that up. But the regular FEMA housing needs will cover that. Other housing needs include such things as disaster-related medical expenses, funeral expenses, money for fuel, money to clean up your house, like to get a dehumidifier or to get a wet vac, things which relate to serious immediate needs that are not covered by housing needs. Now, theoretically, there is a catch-all in the other housing needs section that says, or as determined by FEMA. So if you have some special need that doesn't fit in, they may fit within the other housing needs. You also can qualify inside of these housing and other housing needs for money to pay for an increased cost of compliance. We now are making you elevate your home so this doesn't happen again. I don't have that kind of money. So naturally, FEMA has an ICC, increased cost of compliance amount, that will pay you money, in this case, upwards of $31,000, to help your house comply with flood plans or designs that are put out by your local or national entity. If you recognize those basic food groups, then the only other thing you need to know about FEMA is, does the person qualify for FEMA, that type of relief? And if they qualify, what do they physically need to do? I'm just going to read you some of the qualifications, and then you'll get materials that will actually help you to have a checklist. If a disaster's been declared by the president, if insurance isn't sufficient, if you are a citizen of the United States, or someone lives with you as a citizen of the United States, or a non-citizen national, or a qualified alien, if you have a Social Security number, there are fundamental requirements that are associated with qualifying for those plans when you're inside a disaster area. So it's not just being inside a disaster area, it's also qualifying. The great thing about this is that on the FEMA website, on the disaster recovery website, it will actually tell you what qualifications are there and helps the person to fill out and tells them the kinds of documents that they need. So, we have basically now gone through and understood the fundamental things of insurance, the terms, FEMA, the relief, homeowners, the terms and relief, and we are next ready to launch into how to process a claim, how to secure the most money. In order to secure the most money, we want to look to all the available remedies. That is, the FEMA relief, the homeowners, residential, co-op, renters, condominium association policies, the flood policies, and perhaps additional types of coverages that you might secure, boiler and machinery, other types of policies that might fall within the extra coverage. You might even have umbrella policies that are contained within the discussions we're talking about. Theoretically, you could have car insurance coverage that could cover the tree falling on the car. But we're going to focus on the principal areas of how to secure the most money. In order to do that, I have to provide those entities with the most information in the most understandable way that proves that my claim is a covered claim, is something that is worthy of being paid. In the insurance industry, they call it a covered peril. Okay? So I want to make sure that I have sufficient documentation, proof, to where it's going to make them pay. And I want to provide it them as quickly as I possibly can. And I want to create the most pressure in the nicest way to move myself up the food chain to get paid first. In dealing with a mass disaster, you're talking about hundreds of thousands and perhaps millions of claims. How do you elevate yourself up to get paid the fastest? You do that by making sure that you have all of the information that's needed packaged in a way that is most productive. So let's talk about that. FEMA. How do I understand what I need to do? Well, FEMA has ways to apply that can be done by a phone call, can be done online, can even be done with a smartphone application. Once you apply to FEMA, you trigger several things. You trigger a claim number or an ability to receive money, and you trigger an opportunity to get relief from the SBA, a loan. Now, FEMA has two kinds of money: grant money, free money, loan money, money you got to pay back. Ask 100 people on the street, which would you prefer? I'd rather have the free money. So we want to get the free money first. Interestingly enough, and something that is technical that you just need to know, that everybody needs to know, is that generally speaking, you can't get free money from the government unless you fill out the SBA loan documents. That doesn't sound right. Sounds like if I don't want loan money, why am I filling out loan forms? Well, if you talk to the SBA, if you talk to the FEMA officials coming out who represent FBA, they will tell you that the regulations require that you fill out the SBA loan documents, even if you don't want to take the loan. So practically speaking, if you go online and fill out the information, you'll get a letter in the mail, kind of a brown envelope. You do not want to throw that in the garbage. You want to fill that out. You want to tell clients to fill that out. Whether you qualify or not has no impact on your ability to get grant money, free money. You don't have to take the loan if you qualify. They don't say because you qualify, we're not paying you grant money. You either qualify for grant money or you don't. You either qualify for SBA money or you don't. But you have to fill out the forms. That's what the SBA and FEMA is telling every single resident. So you have to make sure, as the client or as the person helping the client, that the affected person fills out that SBA information. Some people will claim they got money even though they didn't fill out the form. That may be true. But the practical impact, the actual proper methodology, according to FEMA/SBA, is that you have to fill out that documentation. So if they want more money, they want the most money, I got to have a FEMA application in SBA. That's important for you to know because it may impact insurance. If you've already been paid FEMA money, it might impact how much insurance money you get. Now, as everyone knows, insurance comes first. But because of the emergencies, FEMA may have come out and given you some advances. Your insurance companies are also supposed to be put on notice. How do I put them on notice? Typically, I am calling them on the phone. Some insurance companies have online, and it's growing fast, but not all companies do. Notice to your insurance agent that you have a claim is not necessarily notice to the insurance company. Well, I told my agent, not a claim. So you as the insured must make sure that you have contacted the actual insurance company that is on your policy. There's actually a phone number on there or an email on there, and that's where you need to go. If you talk to someone on the phone, they will generally assign you a claim number. If you don't know who to talk to, you call your insurance agent. You call your insurance broker. They are required to help you. Most of them will give you the 800 number and then send you on your way, but you're entitled to have them help you through any parts of this process as possible, and I would encourage you to get them involved. The only way to get paid money from insurance companies is to give them notice. If you don't do it, it's one of those conditions. You can't recover. So we need to make sure that the insured has made a claim. Now, if they spoke on the phone, they'll get a claim number on the phone. If they're smart, they would have spoke on the phone, and then they would have written that person and said, this is confirming that I have spoken with you on X day and I have a claim number. You'll generally get something in the mail from the insurance company that will tell you we've opened a claim. According to New York, for example, within 6 days, somebody has to be out on your property. If they're not, violation of law. You can report them to the Department of Insurance. Give you an example. In Louisiana, an insurance company was penalized over $100 million for failing to timely dispose of claims, and that number continues to grow. So you're not rendered impotent by your inability to get this particular insurance company to pay. And as we mentioned before, because there's now a report card going to be out, because there's now regulations out, you will have remedies. If the insurance company has not sent someone out, you need to send someone out immediately. They have to evaluate the property. Now remember, when FEMA comes out, when the insurance companies come out, they work for FEMA. They work for the insurance companies. I understand they're there to help you, but they work for their respective companies. I recommend that in every one of these cases, once you get the basic information, you immediately get somebody out there who can help you to evaluate damages. Who are those somebodies? Let's start with some of the best and work our way down. I'd love to have an engineer go out there with all kinds of credentials that's looking and saying there's structural problems and other types of problems, window problems, doors that are bent. I'd love to have him or her create a nice detailed report, 10, 20, 30 pages long, that explains the science of wind and water and things like that and explains that entire thing. I want a professional estimator to go out there and make an estimate. And let me talk about that. What do I mean? What do I mean when I say a professional estimator? When you have a problem with your home, when your roof is damaged and you want to get it re-roofed, it's old, you've decided it's time to re-roof. You go to a couple of roofing companies and they give you what they call an estimate. This is what it's going to cost. Sign here if you want to do it. That is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a detailed document that goes room by room, item by item, and puts it into a formula with dimensions and schematics and the type of replacement wood or the type of replacements that need to be done. That's a real estimate. There are actual software programs that insurance companies use to go into rooms, go into structures, go onto land, and to look at them, and it will tell them the cost of replacing this kind of wood is X dollars. That's the market rate. And it will generate an entire proposal with dimensions, schematics, floor plans, and the like. So, position A, our best position, I got an engineer telling me scientifically there are problems. I've got a full-blown estimate detailing each problem and how much the cost is. If I have specific problems, I want to get specific experts out there also. Electrical. I might want to get a licensed electrician. If it's sophisticated, I might want an engineer. That's an engineer with a specialty in electrical contracting. Or electrical engineering. If I have a plumbing problem, I might want an appropriate plumbing expert. If I'm talking about the overall structure, I might want a general contractor. As you can see, the more people you get out there, the stronger your claim's going to be. Now, you're balancing that against the cost. It may not make sense to get 5 experts out there for a $2,000 item. But I want you to understand that the more expertise you have on your side, the stronger your claim becomes. Be a human being. Look at 100,000 claims coming in with an estimate written on a napkin, and your package coming in with 100 pages of reports, detailed pictures with photographs, explanations, and the like. So I want to start with really good reporting. In order to support that reporting, I must have documentation. I can't say it enough. Documentation, documentation, documentation. Photographs and videos are the key to success. So I want to make sure I have sufficient photos that are described. Tell me which bathroom it is. Tell me where it is on the wall. Tell me what part of the kitchen it is. Tell me which of the 7 cabinets it is. Tell me which part of wall and which part of room it is. The more detailed, the more pictures I get, the better. If somebody says to you, I have 3 pictures, it's probably not good, unless they're only seeking to recover for 1 pair of shoes. If people haven't taken pictures, they need to take pictures. It's important to make sure that along with what the damages are, you have the documentation supporting those damages. If you have receipts, if you have things that show that it's brand new, it was just bought, this is what it costs, that's going to help you. I'm setting up my proof. So I have these people going on saying there's all these damages. I have pictures accompanying that. You see, for each damaged item, see picture number 1, number 7, number 23, number 45. I have estimates of what it's going to cost to replace that item, and I have receipts to show that it really costs that much. So I'm documenting my claim. If testing needs to be done, that's also great. So if there's damage to a window and we want to determine the type of damage, there are tests that you can do. And I'll use a simple example. If I were to push on a window and it were to have a lot of give, windows are not supposed to move. Maybe millimeters because of the way they're designed, but you shouldn't be able to push your window open and close. When you open your door, you should not hear a whooshing sound from the windows in the back. You should have tight seals. You should not hear sounds outside. So there are specific tests that can be done to support that you have damage. If you're determining water moisture, you can shoot an infrared device at that wall, for example, and it will depict a picture of how much moisture is there. You can do nuclear testing, which does it on an atomic level and tells you how much moisture is there, to support the fact that I actually have damage inside. Your experts should know what appropriate tests to do. But that is why just getting your friend the roofer to write you an estimate that says fix roof is generally not going to be as strong as a detailed explanation showing why it needs to be replaced. Think logically. If I have more than one estimate, that's great. So after I get my monster estimate detailing all the damages and what it costs, I can go down and ask a general contractor to give me a proposal that's consistent with what those costs are, and they can give you a detailed proposal, and then I can add that to it. I'm building a nice little book of support. If you do that, you have a higher likelihood of getting your claim paid. Very simple. I want to make sure that I have as much documentation as possible. If you have before and after type film, phenomenal. You'd be surprised what you might find. You might have a picture of everybody in the house sitting at Christmas, and it shows that same wall that was there 3 weeks before it was damaged. So you want to make sure you look for all the pictures. Videographers. If you've got a video camera, you can walk around and videotape. Wonderful. You can comment while you're videotaping. The key is to estimate. You can have your engineer walk with you in the videotape. The more data you get, the stronger your claim is going to be. As a tactical move, I tell people when an adjuster from the insurance company or government comes out, I want to walk around and document what they did. I don't want them to just show up when I'm not there. Or I want my expert, my adjuster, my estimator, my general contractor, my electrician to walk around with them. In a perfect world, I want to bring a camera or video. And so I take them to each part and say, are you looking at this part of the wall? Yeah, what do you think of that? What do you think they're going to say? No, I'm not telling you? What are you, a 5-year-old? So you want to make sure that you create a record. I don't care if they say, I don't think that's damaged. When your expert's going to say it is, it's very important. And sophisticated experts will help you to do that. That is why when you retain people to help you, if you're getting a public adjuster to help you, or you're getting an electrician, you have to have somebody who understands how to do this. Because they come back and say, well, I walked around with him and he said this. And then the guy gets on the stand and says, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Mommy. So you're talking about trying to document in a way where I don't care what the person's saying. You know, when I train top lawyers on sophisticated deposition techniques, I say to them, here's a rule, of which I have many. Rule number 1, I don't care what a witness says, so long as he says it. I don't care what that person says. But whatever they say, that's going to help me. There is damage, great, I win. There isn't damage, great, I'm going to get my guy to say there is damage. I'm not telling you, you're a buffoon. So what I want to do is, as much as I can, create that pictorial display. And imagine now, you're now the government, you're now the insurance company. You get that package in, are you paying that claim? Versus the person who just made a phone call and got his friend Bob to do an estimate on a napkin. So it's important in our document collection process and in getting to the insurance company that I make sure I have as much documentation as possible. Did they write anybody? Documentation not only includes photographic, but includes written stuff, emails, letters. What did they get from the insurance company? What did they send to the insurance company? What did they send to FEMA? What did they get from FEMA? If they didn't get anything, what's the chronology? Write down on a piece of paper, sir, ma'am, the entire chronology of phone calls and what you remember. And then I'll question you about it. Go to the online form at stormhelpteam.com. Fill out that form, which will give as much information as possible, and then I can question you about that instead of starting from scratch. Let's exhaust the memory as you know it. Very important to collect all the information that you think is going to support the claim. And the reason why this information is important is because you might have somebody who comes out to a site and says, that claim's worth 150 grand. You might have somebody tell you on the phone, oh yeah, we've seen that problem. The people down the street, we already paid 50 grand to, so you can expect that to come to you. You don't know what they're going to say, but if you get that information, it can be very helpful. So I want to make sure that I'm getting all the documentation. If you have the insurance policies, it is critical. If they don't have the insurance policies, you need to make sure they do written and oral requests of their insurance agent and of the insurance broker, of the actual insurance company, for a copy of their policy. I also suggest, if you can, get last year's policy. Because sometimes the policies might have some different language in that was never intended. Maybe the copy of the policy you got isn't really your policy. Sometimes when you get copies of policies from insurance companies, it comes from a clerk desk who prints it off of a computer. And they put all the forms, because insurance policies are made up of very, very common forms, and then occasionally some personal forms. But it is very important to understand that if you do not have the full insurance policy, you may be missing coverage. Now, if you all have insurance, you'll understand that when you have insurance, you will get things in the mail, you open it up, and it's a document from the insurance company, one page, and it says, this is additional for your policy. It is absolutely written in some other language. It makes absolutely no sense at all. I don't know where it applies. I don't know what page it is. It doesn't say, please replace page 57 of your policy. So what do we all do? We throw it in our folder with our insurance. We have no idea what it means. And we got like 9 of those when now I got to get recovery. Or you threw it away thinking it wasn't important. Or you misplaced it. That's why I want a copy of the full policy. I want to know if changes have been made. What kind of changes have been made? So it's very important to make sure you have a copy of the policy. And if you can get a copy of another year's policy, usually the year before, it tends to help you. Because it tends to give you a comparison tool in case you think something is covered that wasn't. Maybe it is truly an error. A lot of times people don't have the coverage they think because their insurance agent either didn't tell them or misinformed them. If that happens, there may be a separate claim against the insurance agent or insurance brokerage. So that may be a claim, but that claim comes about only after you have been unsuccessful in getting all your insurance money. But what they were told is very important. So I want to make sure I have that information. Since I need these experts and these estimators, I want to create a pool of people to draw from because I may have a lot of claims. Or if I'm an individual, I may want to find a good resource who could do the best estimate, do the best engineering report, do the best general contractor's evaluation. But you can see that the more documentation you have, the stronger you can package your claim and then send it to the insurance company, the better. You also need to make sure that when you're involved in a claim, as either the person, the insured, or a person helping the insured, that you document everything you do. That means every time you speak to somebody, you write a confirming letter. Every time they speak to you, you write a confirming letter. Every time you do something they say you're supposed to do, you write a confirming letter. And what I mean by that is I am not talking about letters that say, this shall confirm that we have spoken on this date and you have said this. All my letters are very nice. Thank you so much today for speaking to me and agreeing to make sure you had an agent out there by December 4th at 10 a.m. I look forward to seeing that. If I am mistaken in any way, please write me immediately. This way, if you're wrong, they have to write you. They can't say, well, I called them and told them it was a different date. It's very important because if you do that and you write 15 or 16 times over a period of a year or so, and you keep saying, write me if you have a problem, and nobody writes you, it's hard for them to explain to a jury that they called you and told you, and that you're just lying. How much do you document? Here's an example of one insurance claim and how many letters were written back and forth. It's important for a number of reasons. You want to create a definable, understandable track record of the chronology of events that happened. You want to justify your time in case a court of law wants to review that time, because in many states you can recover attorney's fees and costs, including paralegal time. You want to make sure, whether you're the lawyer or you're the actual insured, that you have shown, here's all the things I've did, and this is what I relied upon in doing it. So that if you have to go to a supervisor, a manager, make a complaint with the state, it is very clear that you have a roadmap. When you look at my files, you will see that you do not even need to speak to me. The file tells the entire story. If I write and they say they're going to call me back, and I say, thank you for agreeing to have an adjuster call me by December 1st, and then the adjuster doesn't call, and on December 2nd I say, as you know, I wrote you back on November 24th, and you spoke to me on November 23rd and promised me that you would come out by December 1st. You did not come out. This is my second request. I'm really not sure why you would make a representation and then, not honor your promise, but I'm asking you again. On December 3rd, I'm going to say, I wrote you on November 26th and December 1st. I don't understand what the problem is. Why aren't you responding? Why are you disregarding me? Why won't you respond to me? Love and kisses you. On December 9th, this is my 4th letter, my 6th letter, my 9th letter. When you go to a supervisor and you say, I don't want you to believe what I say and what the adjuster's claiming or what that estimator's claiming or what the expert's claiming, I want you to look at the paperwork and let me see what you think. And when you show them 9 letters and the person hasn't responded, it doesn't make a difference what they claim. It doesn't matter if they say, well, I called you on the phone. That's just garbage because you're putting, if I misunderstand you, please write me. When you want to give available dates for inspections, when you want to write to an insurance company, and you say, please let us know the dates of availability that you would have for an inspector to come out. For your benefit, I have given you the following dates that I'm available. December 1st, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. December 2nd, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. December 3rd, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. December 4th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. December 5th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. December 6th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. December 7th, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, January 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Please pick one of those dates. How can they say we're unavailable? You're certainly available. You live there. So don't go in and ask for some dates. Tell them, I'm ready today. Some will come on Sunday. Great. If you cannot pick one of those dates, please let us know. If you have unavailable dates, I can do any date of the year except for December 25th because I'm celebrating Christmas. In fact, if you want to come December 25th, bring your appetite. After inspection, you can eat with us. Love and kisses you. If you do that, what you're doing is you're providing that chronological roadmap that makes it easy to understand. If you're talking to a client or a prospect and you're telling them what to do in order that they are later on going to come back to you, you want to tell them to start doing it. Listen, if you're not hiring a lawyer, an adjuster now, please make sure you start doing that. Because then when it comes to you, you're not starting and reinventing the wheel. You're picking up on all those things. Document, document, document. And if you do that, you're setting up your claim. And also you're talking about, okay, we have 1 million claims that came in, and we got one claim with 300 letters in it. Which one are you paying? You want your conversion rate as a person serving the insured to be high. As the insured, you want to get paid money. The more documentation, the more corroboration you have, the better. And no matter what they say to you on the phone, no matter what that inspector promises you, you write down in extraordinary detail. I use their words. You actually said, there's absolutely no problem whatsoever in getting over the 100,000 to you as soon as I get back. Those were your exact words. I want to thank you for telling me that and making me much easier and more calm. Now I don't have to worry about doing other things. In reliance on your thing, I'm going to wait for you. You see what we're doing? It's very important to create that record. And I can't emphasize enough that your track record displays exactly what you do. And when anybody's evaluating you, whether that be someone who is related to you and asking you why you didn't do a good insurance claim, or whether you're a lawyer or a paralegal or an adjuster or anybody, you want to be able to show your track record. That's very, very important. In addition to having both the proper experts, the proper videos and photographic evidence and plans and things like that, in addition to have all the correspondence and all of the emails and other things and creating that sort of chronology, I want to make sure that I fit that information into the type of coverage they have. How do I do that? How do I know which insurance policy to use? How do I know what's covered? The important thing to understand is that if you're seeking insurance coverage, you have to fall within the specific conditions of that policy. If you're seeking FEMA coverage, you have to fall within the conditions of that coverage. So you want to look at each policy. So let's take the homeowners policy, for example. If we have coverage A, and it is about the walls, the structure, the window framing, the electrical, the plumbing, the openings being windows, doors, things like that. I can, as a insured, say, how many of those items fit within that? As a person helping an insured, you could say, do you have this kind of damage? Or when they tell you what kind of damage it is, you can fit that in the box. You want to know what the coverages are, because that coverage A, for example, in a residential policy, is going to tell you how much money you have to use. So I want to look for the coverages that are going to have the most money. Now, in order to do that, I got to have the right peril. In other words, I cannot use a flood policy to get recovery for roof damage caused by a lightning strike, caused by violent winds. Makes sense to everyone. So I have to know what's covered. You have to look to those definitions of what is a flood and what the national flood policy says, or what an individual policy defines as flood, and then fit those items in there. Sometimes it becomes difficult when you're in storms because you have a lot of wind, a lot of rain, and flood. And while it's easy generically to see flood water come in, it may be that a window was broken because storm winds broke it and then water flowed in. That covered peril was caused by a homeowner's, a storm event. So you want to find out what is the exact damage so you can fit it into those particular criteria using the guidelines that you have. If you do that, now you take all this information, this estimate, these damages, this documentation, these letters, and then you're tailoring future discussions to that very thing. As you know, we have a window that's been broken as a result of wind, and that rain poured in and destroyed the furniture, the couch, the $300,000 jewelry. We have contents coverage for that amount. We're trying to understand from you, insurance company, why you haven't yet issued the check. If you have any information that supports why our estimate is wrong, please write me. If you have any information to support why our engineer is not using science, is not applying the right tests, should be thrown in jail, please write me. You can write letters, you can document in a way that says, if we're wrong, you need to tell me. You can't just avoid me. So by finding out the peril, I also can home in. I can take a camera lens and focus in on the specific types of harm. If I have electrical problems, and it is caused by the roof which leaked and poured water into the electrical thing, I have a structures claim. I want to hammer home that and get that money for that. The reason why it's important to put them in categories is an insurance company may not say, let's wait till we get the whole claim adjusted. We'll be back there to look at that later. They have to pay money they know is due, sometimes called undisputed money. If you have clearly electrical problems and it costs $1,000 to fix and they know it, they can't say, we're not going to pay that $1,000. We're going to wait till the end of the claim and decide what we want to pay. That's bad faith. That's not acting prudently. And the reason why those things are important is later on you can get additional damages. In some states, that company can be subject to punitive damages, to additional attorney's fees, to treble damages, to other types of relief for like emotional distress, consequential damages, so forth and so on. So it's important to categorize and define what you can definitely get paid and get it paid immediately. There is nothing wrong with getting multiple payments. There's nothing wrong with getting money now and getting money later. Obviously, I want all my money now, but there's nothing wrong with getting that. There's no release when you get part of money and then don't get other money. And you should not either sign a release or advise anybody to sign a release because you're not required to. It's important to understand also who is getting the money. What do I mean by that? Well, ordinarily, if you have a personal injury case or you have a contract case, the person who's suing gets the money. I hereby agree to settle with you for that slip and fall in that store, and I, Publix, is going to pay you, plaintiff, $50,000 and they write a check to you. Maybe occasionally they write it to your law firm. Maybe they write it to both of you. In property damage cases where there is a mortgage, you have to look at the mortgage because oftentimes they want the money paid to them or they want their name as an additional payee on the check. Why? Because they simply want to make sure that their property is protected. If they have a mortgage for $300,000 and they have no house on it, and the property is worth $50,000 and the house is blown over, they want to make sure that you replace that house. Otherwise, their mortgage is not worth very much. So they will oftentimes be required to be put on the check. Now, we'll talk about the strategies for what happens when you put them on the check and how you get them off the check and how you get to cooperation. But suffice it to say that, therefore, I want to know if there is a mortgage on the property. If so, I need the mortgage documents. I have to know. If I'm a public adjuster or a lawyer, I'm going to want to make sure that my name's as a payee on the check or that a separate check is made to me so it's not held up. But the concept is that you need to know who are the players that are going to be on there. Sometimes you have people who have additional insureds. I'm renting a commercial premises. The additional insured is the landlord. His name may also go on the check because the damages may relate to that property. So getting those documents, if you're a rentee, the landlord documents, to understand what is covered and what's not, is critical to this process of gathering documents. What other things do you need to secure by way of information? Well, a lot of times people don't realize that the people who can get money from an insurance company are the people who are named as the insured, not necessarily the owners. So an insured may not be an owner. So I want to know who the insured is and who the owners are. A good example is if I'm a renter, I'm not the owner of that property, but I would be the one suing for damages. I would be the one pursuing the insurance company for damages. I would be the one who would be seeking redress, unless the owner also had a separate policy. So there are circumstances where you might have an owner and a renter, and there could be overlapping coverage. So in a renter situation, I might also want to know about the owner. That is why we always ask, and you should always ask if you're an insured, who is the owner versus who is the insured? Where are their insurance policies? Sometimes it's easily demarcated where one insurance starts and where one takes over. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people have coverage and then have something called an umbrella policy, which is coverage that says, for other things which I may not have covered. Or in car insurance, for example, you can get extra coverage. I can increase my bodily injury from $1 million to $3 million for a very low amount of money, and the rest of the terms stay the same. I can get policies that are called DIC policies, or difference in condition policies, where that they fill in the blanks of areas that might not be covered, or they add insurance. The important thing to understand is that we're not just necessarily dealing with the insured. There may be multiple claims. So as part of my investigation, or if you're an insured, you want to check with the owner to see if there's additional coverage that might be available, or different insurance policies that might cover the events in question. In addition, I want to know that that property has not changed hands or is not changing hands. If that house is up for sale, then you may have the rights to the property extinguished or transferred by a sale. Depending on the jurisdiction you're in, you may need to get an assignment of the insurance claim. I know I am selling you my house, but I am keeping the right to recover my contents for my clothing. So it is critical to know, is that house up for sale? Is somebody contemplating a sale? It is not fatal. I do not ask that question like, well, if you answer me that, that's going to be horrible. I tell them, if you don't tell me that information, you might lose your claim. So it's not done in an offensive way. If you're an insured, don't hide that information, because there may be additional documents you need to get to protect yourself to hold on to that claim. That's why you ask them. And you ask them, are you contemplating selling? Or is the owner contemplating selling if you're the renter? If so, I got to look at the terms of the policy and see if they sell, do I have to get out immediately? Are there any rights that are maintained? Do I lose my rights? What's the state I'm in? Do I need an assignment? How do I protect my rights? Etc. Some people are in dire straits. They have to sell their home because it's not worth anything now. How do I protect my claim? So it's important to know. Please tell me if you're even contemplating it, because I need to know from a legal perspective. You as the insured or owner need to know from a legal perspective that it will impact recovery. I want to also make sure that I have financial information available. Why is that important? There's a lot of fraud that goes on in the industry where people try to make claims that aren't really valid claims. Their window is already broken and now they're trying to claim the storm caused it. They're inflating their claims. They're saying those shoes were worth a lot more than they were. That computer, that TV was a special kind of TV. That wall covering was imported from an island off Norwegia. Wherever it is, whatever it is, insurance companies have the right to protect themselves against that. So financial motive can be a bias. Again, I don't care what a witness says, so long as he says it. I don't care what their financial situation is, but we need to know it to make sure we eliminate any chance of a motive. And again, we're not suggesting, if we're advising an insured, that you're doing anything wrong. And if you're an insured, don't take it personally if an insured is questioned. If you're questioned about your financial status. That doesn't mean you have to disclose those documents. It means we have to know whether that is an issue. We need to understand, are they delinquent in payments? In non-disaster related claims, it's always an issue. In disaster related claims, it may impact your ability to get the money freed up from your mortgage company, from your association. So if I am delinquent in my mortgage, for example, and I am in New York or New Jersey, and I have an FHA, like a Fannie Mae or a FHA loan, that's the type of mortgage I have, there is a dictate that says you can't hold up my money that I need to rebuild my structure and claim you're entitled to get paid your past mortgage payments. But if you have those older mortgage payments and you're not one of the qualified companies, they may be able to keep that money. You have to look at the mortgage documents, but you need to know, either as the insured or as the person advising, what kind of information they have and whether they're current or not. If you have any questions, tell them to give you their bank statement. Tell them to give you their financial document showing that they're current on their mortgage or their rent or wherever they're at. The importance is we're shrimp netting. We're gathering knowledge. We're pulling it in. We're applying it where we see fit. That is the key in these claims. Contact information. I need to know every single person who might have any knowledge having to do with this claim. Who might those people be? The insurance agent's name, contact information. What he or she has done on the claim. How long they've been your insurance agent. If it's only 1 year, this is my first year, I might want to get the prior agent. Because I might have some issues about disclosure. What was told to them, what coverage they got. The insurance brokerage. Agents usually work for an insurance broker. Not necessarily the insurance company, the insurance broker. When you look at your insurance policy, it will say who the insurance broker is as well as who the agent is. And it will also say who the insurance company is. So unless that agent is a direct agent of the company, I am a State Farm agent selling State Farm insurance, you might have a broker in between. You also might have a State Farm agent that has an agency, which is then a broker. You want to make sure you have that information because you might have 100 agents working for an agency. I might want to contact somebody for documents that relate to either what they told the insurance company, how money was paid, when the insurance was bound, all kinds of questions. So I want contact information. I also want that agent to participate in this process, whether they like it or not. I want to get the insurance company information. Oftentimes it's on the policy, but you need to check and see. There may be multiple insurance companies that are involved in the policy. There may be multiple policies. I want to make sure I have the contact information for where's the claims department, complaint departments, the departments which you think you might be utilizing, or the departments which they've called as the insured. Mortgage broker, mortgage agent, mortgage company. Want that contact information. Again, might not be an issue, but it might be an issue. All people, that includes family, friends, relatives, that have knowledge about the claim. They were there the night of the storm. They came over the next day. Names and contact information. I'm going to probably want to go get statements from them while they're friendly. I'm going to probably want to tell the insured, or if I'm the insured, I'm going to want to get statements from them. I don't care if it's written on a napkin, signed by them. In a perfect world, you'd have it notarized, or you'd have something done under oath. But the concept is that I want to know everybody who knows about the claim. And you'll find, amazingly, that when you do that, you will get more information about the claim that maybe the insured forgot. Remember, when I use the term insured, that could be plural. There might be multiple insureds. The policy will tell you, or policies will tell you, who the insureds are in each case. I also want to make sure that I give the names of anybody who's performed any repairs, anybody who's given an estimate, anybody who drove by the house and looked at it. Because those people might be helpful to get further information, to get a copy of their estimate, to get comments, to use them as an expert, or any number of other possibilities. I want all that contact information. That includes people who already made repairs. If repairs are being made,
I'm trying to find a video about the camera, and this is what happens.
tell me, you okay?
Sorry about that.
No worries. If repairs are made or repairs are being made, then there are certain important strategies you want to undertake. If the insured is having a general contractor come out on January 1st to fix some property, and it is not yet January 1st, we want to notify the insurance companies, every one of them, and the FEMA officials, and anybody else who might be providing money, hey, we have a person coming out. We're again offering you a chance to inspect, to re-inspect, to meet with that person, to give it different ideas, to make other suggestions. Please come out on X date to do that. Please contact us in writing if you want. You always want to disclose what you're doing, how you're doing it. I want to keep telling the insurance company, hey, look at it before it's fixed. Because after it's fixed, things may disappear. So I want to give notification in writing, and I want to do it over and over again. If it's 6 weeks away, I'll give them a notice 6 weeks, then I'll give them notice 3 weeks, then I'll give them notice the week of. And I'll number them. This is my third notice to you. I haven't heard from you. They're starting tomorrow. Very important. If the repairs are already made, I want to get those receipts, get those documents, make sure that perhaps my expert has confirmed those are needed, and include that in the materials I'm sending to the insurance company. It is important to keep remembering, I am creating the chronology. I am documenting what's already been done. I'm telling everybody what's happening. If you can work with the insurance company and they want to adjust the date, try to adjust the date to make sure it works for them. But you're not required under law to not start repairs if you've given them notice and an opportunity to see that. Preserve evidence. Most people do not realize that preserving evidence can be a wonderful thing. If you have to replace wood, and you can keep a piece of that wood, you're going to realize that that might be useful to be tested later. The inspector might want it to be looked at. You might want to use it as something to illustrate or photograph later as the type of damage that's occurred to your property. So you always want to try to keep samples of things, and the expert will usually know. Keep a copy of the broken shingles. Take parts of the broken window. Make sure if you have replaced the stucco that you have some stucco that is damaged. So you show whatever it is. The more information and data you can keep, the better it is if somebody claims later they didn't have an opportunity to see it. So preserving evidence can be a wonderful thing, and you want to identify if they have any such evidence. You may or may not want to take custody of it. Depends on what it is. Your expert may want to take custody of it, may want to examine it. You may want to offer the insurance company to see it if they claim they haven't had a chance to see it, which I don't know how any insurance company could claim that when they're supposed to be out within 6 days. But some will come out and they will say, we're going to come back. and something happens between that time because you can't wait. So it's important to inform them of that information. You want to know what data you have for each component of damages. When we first started talking, we talked about the fact that you're going to get an estimate and you're going to document that, and then you're going to have photographs. You want to try to mirror so that every item of damage has a corresponding photo or document. So if they say all the windows are damaged, instead of just having a picture of a sample window, you want to have a picture of each window. So don't overlook when we're talking about matching information to damages, the fact that we want to make sure we have consistency with documenting each and every part. So by way of the contact information, we now have gathered all of the information from the related sources that we have. Now, obviously, you're going to want to have contact information for the people you retain. You obviously want to know who the insurance company sent out and their information, what inspector came out, who they spoke to. If you're insured, or if you were insured, you personally spoke to someone, and then you spoke to someone else, names and addresses, contact information for each one of them. Whether you are the insured, the owner, the lawyer, the insured, a public adjuster, or anybody else, you have the right to call the insurance company. I represent so-and-so, and I'd like to ask you some questions. Can you give me some help? Oftentimes, people will have a letter written, say you're a lawyer, that says, we represent so-and-so. Please direct all further communications to us. And you have that letter ready and available in case somebody asks you for it, but you can send that out to the respective insurance companies to immediately notify them that you don't want them ending around the insured. If you're an adjuster, you don't want them talking to the insured. You want them talking to you, and it's not for any other reason but then one person gets all the information. So as part of the things we're going to get to, and actually physically what you send the insurance company, when you're taking down information and you're learning about these different people, keep in mind that I might need to notify them of who I am. So I basically covered a good understanding of how I capture information, how I apply it to the claims, how I get information necessary so I can ensure that I have sufficient documentation to be able to consider the claim. I next can move to the physical processing of that claim, the actual things that can be done with the insurance company itself to further expedite the process. Oftentimes you will find, as we get to this process, that the insured has already done something. Or if you're the insured, you will have done some things, but you will not have completed all of them. You will have provided some documents, but you would not have provided all of them. Next, we'll move to some of the physical things that you do with pushing that claim along the process to getting settlement monies or getting to trial if you have to sue.